Cydonia, who actually won the 2016 America's Spring Playoff, versus Monsanto, who was a representative at the America's Summer Championship, finished top 8. So these guys are both actually playing from the Montreal Tavern location, and it is going to be a great match indeed. Firebat, how you doing, man?
Doing good. Yeah, been casting Hearthstone all day, so can't really complain. Yeah, one of my favorite things to do, I'd say, and we have a lot of great players here. You know, Monsanto and Cydonia are players I've played at events with, I've met in person, so it's always fun watching people that you know play against each other. It makes for an exciting game.
Yeah, both of these guys, great players, great friends, actually. So that's going to make, obviously, an unfortunate situation for them to have to be playing each other so soon. But it makes for some great Hearthstone and a great story. Obviously, Monsanto had a fantastic year in 2016, but Cydonia really was an amazing story to behold from 2016. So go ahead and take a look.
I've been playing Hearthstone since the start, and I've been playing like strategy games like that, and I've always been pretty competitive in what I do, like sports and games. So on one hand, I always want to win and expect to win.
One of the underdogs of the tournament up against one of the favorites.
But on the other hand, all the tournaments I did well in last year, I was always coming in as the underdog, and maybe people were underestimating me. And last year, I wasn't surprised that I made it far, even though other people didn't know me.
Cydonia with an incredible first series.
Yeah, so huge.
I'm really happy I could like prove people wrong. When I made it to the top 8 of the BlizzCon, like my first thought was that I had a chance to go all the way and be the world champion, and I didn't do it. So it was disappointing for me to lose, but when I look back at the whole year, like only 8 players in the world made top 8 at Worlds. So I know that I can play on the biggest stage and still be focused and still play well. So it makes me want to go there again this year and do it even better.
Top 8 at Worlds in his first year of competitive Hearthstone, and now he's back better than ever and hoping to make it back once again. Let's talk lineups, Firebat. We've been taking a look at both of these guys' 4-deck lineups, and it does seem like they're rather evenly matched.
Right. There's a couple weaknesses that are a little bit apparent here. We can look at Cydonia's lineup and see that the Quest Warrior may have a little bit of struggle. It's going up against a Rogue, which typically can do pretty well against Quest Warrior. Control Paladin, Discover Mage, and Silence Priest are all decks that are like kind of good against Quest Warrior, but none of them I would say are like your ideal perfect Quest Warrior counter. And then on the other hand of things, Monsanto has a deck that's most likely going to struggle, which is going to be his Control Paladin, which if it doesn't line up against that Quest Warrior, it could really get beat out by Quest Rogue having a super favorable matchup, mid-range Murloc Paladin as well, just being able to consistently beat Control Paladin, and Jade Druid. So trying to get the right Q sequence to make sure that you can land the Control Paladin up against the Quest Warrior is important, and making sure you can capitalize on that win.
Yeah, it absolutely is going to be tough where neither of these guys have a real clear advantage. That Control Paladin is a deck that is very interesting to me in this tournament as a whole. We obviously saw Amnesiac with a deck that was very similar, and he really struggled to get a win with it. It seems to me like if you want to play Control Paladin, maybe the N'Zoth build is the better way to go, and then you try to target other greedy Control Paladin decks by being just that little bit greedier. It maybe gives you a bit of a better win condition. But we've been seeing most of these Paladin decks just top out at Tyrion if they don't choose to put in the Murloc package.
Right, and that can be kind of expensive. One thing that's interesting to note about Monsanto's Control Paladin, whereas it took away some of the extra late game, it has included some cards that just make it exceptionally good versus Taunt Warrior to try and secure up that matchup for him. He has a Vine Cleaver in there and 2 Stampeding Kodos, so he really wants to hit that matchup because those are cards that are just amazing. Stampeding Kodo can come down taking out, an Alley Armorsmith or a Bloodhoof Brave, and Vine Cleaver can basically neutralize the quest completed hero power. So unfortunate for Monsanto, though, he's lined up with the Priest up against the Quest Warrior, and this is a big opportunity for Cydonia if he's able to navigate through this matchup, which I wouldn't say is particularly favored for the Taunt Warrior, but if he's able to squeak out a win here with the Taunt Warrior, he's going to be in a commanding position to take this series going forward.
This is definitely one of his best options to take a win with the Quest Warrior in this series. And what you really want to do against this combo Priest variant that Monsanto has with all the silence mechanics is you need to keep them off the board, period. And the Warrior has a lot of very efficient removal using Fiery War Axe in the early early game. Brawl obviously executes, that you can keep the board state very small and hope to really mitigate the effect of Divine Spirit Inner Fire combo.
Yeah, that's the plan anyway in the beginning.
The ideal
but
world.
Yeah, you can run into trouble as sometimes you run out of removal. Sometimes you don't have enough to get the job done. Sometimes you don't have the brawls line up correctly for you, and one minion sticks. And sometimes that's all it takes is one minion to stick. The important part from the priest's perspective, though, is trying to maximize the amount of divine spirits you can have by generating additional divine spirits off of shadow visions to try and increase your burst potential so that the warrior opponent cannot outlast it, and they're forced into a situation where they have to kill you. They can't just sit around all day. And one of the best ways to improve your divine spirits and just make your deck faster and uncontrollable by the taunt warrior that's trying to control your combo plan is maximizing your draw. So it's important to time the Northshire Cleric appropriately.
Now, I do want to ask, it did look like Cydonia mulliganed away his quest in this matchup, did not play it on one,
Right.
does not have it in hand. Is that something that you would advise doing against Silence Priest?
I think that it's a bold way to play the matchup, right? So what Cydonia is saying when he's doing that is he's saying, I don't need to pressure you to win this game. I don't need to complete my quest. I don't need to actually kill you. I will win by having more resources than you at the end of the game by removing all of your threats. So kind of like what you were saying in the beginning, where his plan is to remove all of the threats. I think that is ambitious. Personally, yeah, I feel like it puts a lot of the power in the hands of the priest. I think if the priest is able to navigate the matchup correctly with unlimited time, the priest can win. So now that Monsanto does not have to worry about the potential quest being completed and that Ragnar's hero power being unlocked, he can really take his time and make sure he gets max value out of Northshire Cleric. He can hold back and set up Lyra to get additional value off of that. He needs to just make sure that he recognizes, hey, Cydonia's not trying to complete the quest. I don't need to, go out guns blazing. I can slow this down. I can, build my entire combo up. So I really like him playing the Razor Leaf here rather than the Northshire Cleric, holding on to that, trying to just guarantee he can get value.
Here we can see Cydonia actually had to play against the other representative playing at the Montreal Tavern, Doc Pone, in round 2. Did take a win there. And if he beats Monsanto, he will then have team killed all of the Canadian players at the Montreal location.
Right. That's something to brag about for sure. Being able to beat up on all your friends is always a good feeling and a bad feeling at the same time.
I could take those wins.
Monsanto here is trying to figure out whether or not he wants to commit the silence. He only has 3 silences in his deck. Obviously, he has the shadow visions to generate additional silence effects, but generating additional silence effects are expensive, as it means you're not going to get further divine spirits to improve your burst. But I'm really not a fan of this play. He's trading the cleric for only 1 draw, kind of accepting the fate that his cleric is only going to be able to draw once. I feel like he could have gotten more value out of that cleric. Oftentimes, the warrior is so afraid of the card draw from the priest, especially when the warrior is not threatening to complete the quest, that they'll execute a cleric if they have no way to kill it. So just, it feels cheap exposing it for only 1 draw like that.
Especially since the basis of combo decks is you need the ability to draw.
Right.
You need to draw into these combo pieces to actually execute your combo, and giving up one of your best methods of draw. I mean, obviously he has 2 copies of Acolyte of Pain in the deck as well. It's still a big sacrifice.
Yeah. Usually you want to be trying to make them use their turn to get rid of that, force it to be expensive to them. But Cydonia already had the War Axe equipped. It was not expensive for him to remove that essential resource from Monsanto. So I feel like he could have been taking the game a little more patiently. Now he's in this awkward spot where if he wants to continue this high tempo line that he's committed to, he now has to play a Shambler as a 4-mana 4/8, which sounds good. Like 4-mana 4/8 in a lot of decks isn't bad, but
in this deck, it's not.
In this deck, it's not what you want. You don't have that many minions that can even attack. So each of them has to be very powerful. And so he's just kind of playing a tempo game, and Taunt Warrior is not a really easy deck to beat in a tempo game like that. It just kind of walks out. He's playing 1 threat at a time into a deck that tries to remove things 1 at a time.
I mean, Monsanto is looking to build his minions' health up to, enormous numbers with the use of Divine Spirit. And the only real absolute removal that Cydonia has is the 2 copies of Execute and 2 copies of Brawl. Sleep with the Fishes will deal a limited amount of damage. Obviously, minion combat can only do so much. So you really want to try and bait out that hard removal while you can to then get your large minions to stick and win the game with those. So it does feel like maybe he's taking it a bit too quickly, sacrificing some of those really valuable resources that he could have gotten some more value out of.
Yeah, he's got a different game plan in mind. I think what he's trying to do is, I guess, exhaust some of Cydonia's early resources to try and set up for Lyra. He did hold back Power Word Shield, which he could have used earlier on to protect the Northshire Cleric. I assume he's trying to save that for Lyra. So maybe his line of thinking in the matchup is saving all of the cards for the combo isn't good enough. I need to try and set up for Lyra to get me extra fuel in this matchup.
It's possible.
And now he's using the Power Word Shield here.
And he's
sticking to the tempo line, I guess.
There is also the fringe situation of Cydonia will be playing cards like Bloodhoof Brave and Ally Armorsmith that have 2 attack and high health totals.
Right.
You do have access to Potion of Madness, which you then can, use Divine Spirit Inner Fire potentially on one of Cydonia's minions as a lethal potential somewhere down the line.
Yeah. We have seen that before. We saw that missed on an earlier game last weekend. So maybe that's the idea here by Monsanto. He's saying, you know what, I'm just going to pressure as aggressively as I can and then make you defensively taunt and then use your own defensive taunts against you.
And then with that little bit of added value from Lyra, maybe you pull, some more damage to be able to finish the game.
It's an interesting approach to the matchup. And it's kind of working right now. He's been able to hit, 2 of his 3 silences. He's activated a couple of threats, and he's pushing in a decent amount of chip damage. Cydonia is still at 25, but starting to make way. And now Cydonia has to debate whether or not this is worth brawling. Does he feel scared? Does he feel like he's going to be able to get Divine Spirit Inner Fired? And he knows there's only 1 silence left in the deck for Monsanto, so there's not going to be a lot of additional threats that could come out. The only thing that he's really afraid of is 1, losing the Brawl, and 2, Lyra. That's the only other real minion. Otherwise, it has to be a 2-card combo really to punish him in this situation.
Well, that's quite unfortunate.
Yeah.
Shadow Visions could pull Inner Fire with the Cabal Talon Priest. That would be 11 max damage.
You just
still
saw
have plenty of time,
an Execute and a Brawl used. You could just go wide on the board as Monsanto, just set up the Acolyte to try and fish for multiple draws, Acolyte plus Talon Priest, and just camp on that. Hopefully there's no second Brawl for you. There is only 2 Brawls in the deck because this is Hearthstone and you can only play 2 copies of a card.
We're not playing Arena today.
Right. So it's not that likely for Cydonia to have the second Brawl at this point, and you could maybe just refill your hand with the Acolyte.
I mean, to be fair, there have been a lot of potential lines to take for the Silence Priest in this game.
Silence Priest is a deck you can play 100 different directions. It's definitely, I would say, one of, if not the most complicated deck to play. You can either play it as a combo deck, a tempo deck, a value deck. It just goes in all different directions, and knowing which one to do in any specific matchup for the highest win rate is, no one really completely knows. It's only been a deck that's been around for like 2 weeks at this point.
Yeah, it's nigh impossible to have had that much experience with it going into this tournament. Obviously, there were several European players who brought it last weekend, and it did work fairly well, which I think, quite frankly, I was a little bit surprised about.
Yeah, it was definitely surprising to see it. There was like 4 players, I think, out of the top 8 had some variation of Combo Priest. So a lot of them had different card choices as well, so it's not really completely a refined deck list, but right now, the amount of pressure that Monsanto's just been able to consistently put out, this deck typically, you start hitting some of the weird clunky draws in there, but he's just had gas. He's just playing minion after minion after minion, and he's just zooing Cydonia down. Cydonia's just flat out of removal at this point.
Yeah, Silence Priest doesn't usually play as a mid-range priest build type thing, but that's kind of what's happening here.
Right.
And forcing Cydonia to use some removal inefficiently, netting Monsanto 3 cards in the process.
Yeah, he's playing really scared of that Divine Spirit Inner Fire, and he's having to use a lot of resources to try and make sure that that cannot happen, and in the process is just giving Monsanto more gas to play onto the table here.
Well, Monsanto has a lot of decisions to make this turn, and obviously last year was such a big year for Cydonia. Let's take a look at what he thinks is his biggest strength while Monsanto goes off on this live return.
I know that I can play on the biggest stage and still be focused and still play well, where my opponent might be really nervous and play worse because of it, but I'll be really calm and just be able to play as well as I normally do in those settings.
Well, hopefully he doesn't get nervous right now. I'm a little nervous for him. He really needs to find a second brawl, or he is going to be running into a lot of trouble. The Divine Spirit picked up from Monsanto, and the Lyra sticking, very likely that there's a lethal possibility coming out on the following turn. He also just has the Shadow Visions to find the inner fire.
And picks up an additional copy of Silence from the Lyra, so if he, for some reason, does not have lethal this turn, has an additional activator for the Razor Leaf in hand.
Yeah, Cydonia plays the Primordial Drake. One, it's a great threat. Two, it doesn't get killed by Shadowed Death or Shadowed Pain, so it lowers the potential Lyra activations. And three, it injures all of the minions, lowering the Divine Spirit inner fire value on the board. But this is going to be a crazy amount of value generated for Monsanto. Picks up the inner fire if he wants it.
Well, fortunately for Cydonia, Dragonfire Potion doesn't hit dragons.
Yeah, but he has the Silence just to get rid of the taunt, so he's probably going to find lethal here.
It's going to be 16 on board. Mind Blast would do it.
Yeah.
Holy Fire at this point, actually, with the discount, would do it.
Another Divine Spirit.
Yeah.
Mass Dispels, no help though. He's looking for the lethal. That should be able to get there a lot of the time. He has two Divine Spirits still because the one was
Yeah, that's it.
discovered.
All right, well, maybe an unconventional path to victory, but in this case worked out very well for Monsanto, and he's going to go up 1-0. And we said this Quest Warrior matchup was very important for Cydonia. If he could have pulled off a win here, it would have meant that he would have been very favored in this match overall, but unable to ultimately. The Priest looking very strong.
Yeah, I like how Monsanto just adapted to his hand. He drew silences and the minions you're supposed to silence, and then he was like, well, let's not play this as a combo deck anymore. Let's just play this as a mid-range deck. And turns out pretty good.
I have a 3-mana 4/8. I have a Purify. Yeah, that's good enough.
Yeah.
It worked out. So he's going to go up 1-0 now. Still a couple of iffy matchups for Monsanto, but definitely that was a big win for him.
Yeah, a big win for sure. Keeping the Taunt Warrior down, that's one of the targets of his lineup. So he wants to continue winning all of the matchups, obviously, but
yes.
One of the things that makes his lineup good is that all of his decks are slightly favored against that Taunt Warrior. That's one of his target things. We can see it in his tech choices, in the Vine Cleaver, in the Paladin, Harrison Jones, in the Mage, just like the Rogue with the double Vilespine Slayers. All of his decks are slightly teched towards to making sure, or just not teched, but just good decks versus Taunt Warrior, just to make sure they can keep it down.
Well, and that just seems like an overall fantastic choice for this tournament. We saw 8 of the 9 players that are undefeated right now actually have Taunt Warrior in their lineups, other than, I cannot recall his name. He beat Daw early on, and we saw him in one of our matches, but he didn't have Taunt Warrior, but everybody else does. So to tech against control in this tournament is a really solid choice.
Most definitely. And he's teching against control while also teching against aggro.
It's kind of doing it all.
Right, because like Miracle Rogue is actually not that bad statistically against aggressive decks because it has the early game patches package and it has the removal of Backstab and Eviscerate to kind of keep a lot of the aggro decks off the board, especially compared to Quest Rogue. Quest Rogue suffers a lot more against aggro. And the Cygunther Mage, he has a Volcanic Potion in it, and it's just it's naturally pretty good versus aggro because of the hero power and the mage removal kit. So he's able to, instead of targeting control as a blanket, he's just targeting one specific control deck while also targeting aggro, and that's what makes his lineup so strong.
All right, so game number 2, Cydonia on the Jade Druid against Monsanto on the Gunther Mage. Obviously, Jade Druid is the control killer. The Gunther Mage does have a reasonable amount of early game pressure with Mana Worms with Arcanologist, and then obviously it aims for a burn finish in combination with Medivh to create a large board state in some cases. But the Druid has a ton of healing potential, health gain in the form of armor now, and has had reasonable matchups against Mage.
Right. The matchup is fairly good for Druid because the Mage has two different game plans. Game plan A is kind of like outvaluing them, removing all of their stuff while developing, getting Medivh down, playing Firelands Portal, killing your guy and creating overwhelming board pressure, which is great if there's no weapon removal from the opposition, but we can see that Cydonia does have the weapon removal. So later on in the game, Monsanto is going to play Medivh, Cydonia is going to play his Gluttonous Ooze, it's going to remove that, and then Monsanto is going to be forced to switch game plans and go into an all-burn game plan, and when he transitions to this all-burn game plan, Cydonia is going to have double Feral Rage, double Earthen Scales, heal out, and be able to recover from that. That is typically how this matchup goes when the Druid does have some sort of weapon removal for Medivh. That's kind of one of the best chances for the Mage to get a win. The other way is if the Mage just kind of runs away with early game tempo with a really solid curve with Mana Worm, Arcanologist, and that all running out of control.
Yeah, I mean, obviously that's very dependent on having the weapon removal, but weapon removal right now is solid against Warrior, Paladin, and Mage in a lot of cases because you're seeing so much of the Medivh Gunther Mage. So it just seems like if you're going to tech for something, three of the best classes in the game right now seems like the way to go.
Makes sense to me. And that's what we've been seeing from a lot of these players. Cydonia has weapon removal in half of his decks, and you can't really put weapon removal in Quest Rogue, so it makes sense.
I get it. And obviously Cydonia down 0-1 right now. Let's take a look at how he copes when he's behind in a match.
You need not to change your approach too much when you're behind or when you're ahead. Even if there's only a small chance you can come back, there's always going to be a chance. And when like you've prepared so much for this, it's not the time to be emotional and play bad.
It's a very get down to business kind of guy, doesn't want to get too emotional even when he's behind in an important match. And obviously a 2-1 record is good right now, but if you do get those 2 losses early on, then your tiebreakers can be really, really poor, which makes it very difficult to get into the cut to top 8.
Right. Those tiebreakers always seem to matter. But he's going to forgo going for Nourish for Crystals here. He thought about it for a little bit. That's what was the deliberation. He had the ability to Innervate Nourish to generate extra mana crystals, allowing him to still hero power off the Mana Worm that turn, but decides against it, wants to hold on to this Nourish for card draw later on because he recognizes his win condition in the matchup. And the win condition is, well, the Mana Worm's not snowballing out of control, so problem A is answered. Stop the Mage's early game. Now, problem B is stop the Medivh, and he can do that already with the Gluttonous Ooze. And then problem 3 is just heal out of range. And he's going to need card draw to be able to do that, not mana to be able to do that. So when you can just answer all 3 points of attack from what the Mage is trying to do, then you can just be the control deck and control the game to your pace and not have to worry about anything. So I really like the play by Cydonia forgoing the Innervate Nourish for Crystals there.
It really is very good for the Druid that there is such limited development from the Gunther Mage in the mid game. Really, you're limited to Firelands Portal and Medivh.
Right, yeah.
And if you're able to deal with Medivh, then the Druid will 9 times out of 10 have enough board development to be able to deal with 5-drops that come out of Firelands Portal, which can vary greatly in actual usefulness. So once you got those 3 bases covered, the Druid is very comfortable.
Mm-hmm. And you just try and maximize draws so you can consistently find the healing. So I like the game plan. I think it's the way you play the matchup. It's going to be innervating out Aya now just to get some control onto the board. Probably to follow up with Burgly Bully. Put out pressure, try and slow the Mage down. Just textbook Hearthstone, man.
Going through the motions, nothing wrong with that. It shows that they've got experience.
So Monsanto, he hasn't identified yet, or he has no way of really identifying that there's a Gluttonous Ooze for this Medivh. So his mindset at the moment, he still thinks, all right, all I gotta do is slow down the Jade Druid. I got this Polymorph for Aya. I'm in a good spot, reducing the Jade counter. And then later on, I'm just gonna play down this Medivh. I'm gonna get my Firelands Portal off and just tempo him out with crazy amounts of pressure because of that. And he has no idea that Cydonia has been kind of like taking slower plays because he has the Gluttonous Ooze already in his hand and he's got the counterplay to it.
That situation you described is usually incredibly effective against the Druid. Their removal is pretty much limited to board interaction. Swipe
Right.
is poor as far as AoE goes. They have no single target removal except for Feral Rage in some cases. So it is really limited to they need minion pressure to deal with your minion pressure. And usually you'll be able to land Medivh plus Firelands Portal before they're able to build their Jades up large enough and wide enough that they're able to challenge your board. So you can pretty much just kill them from there if you land that board state.
Right. So Monsanto needs to be able to try, like if he's going to win this game, he's going to have to identify at some point, I don't even know how, but he'd have to figure out that the Gluttonous Ooze is already in Cydonia's hand somehow and have to change his game plan from this Medivh and figure out some other way to do it, or he would have to just really snowball hard on these Firelands portals. And one thing that could really come into play is this Molten Reflection, which is potentially, if you wait on Medivh till turn 10, it's a 2-mana 7/7. And that's real. That's a huge threat that could be quite effective against Jade Druid, because as you said, they have limited removal besides board interactions. So if he's able to stay kind of close on board and land this Molten Reflection on a key target, he doesn't have like Archmage Antonitis or anything super fancy like that, but there's got to be something he could try and land, maybe generate something off Courier and then lands this Molten Reflection on it. That's going to be how he, wins from this kind of awkward position where his Medivh is neutralized.
I mean, Medivh comes down. Obviously, the weapon is removed, but you still have the 7/7 body on board that does challenge. Maybe if you get one hit to face with that in, then you can just burn out the game with, Pyroblast or Alexstrasza from there. It's definitely possible.
I mean, honestly, Cydonia is taking this maybe too slow. 2 5/4s is no joke.
That's still more than the Druid can deal with easily.
Yeah, that's setting up lethal on the board, so I don't think Cydonia was anticipating this level of tempo coming out of the Cygunther Mage. Honestly, I wasn't, so it makes sense that he wouldn't be either. It's a crazy amount of pressure, and he's going to have to start taking defensive plays a lot earlier than he would really be liking to, and his Jade counter is already super small.
No, and I don't think the Molten Reflection was super obvious off of the glyph from Monsanto,
Right.
the first one that he did, but it is showing that he understands that he's going to need to build up a board at some point, and Molten Reflection is going to be a way to really help that along when you have limited minions in your deck.
Yeah, the polymorph was from Glyph, so there is a potential for a polymorph here from Monsanto. It would allow him to really push this aggression, but not the case right now. He does have the ability to get down a Medivh the Guardian uncontested at the moment, clear board, and usually you take those, and you can see Cydonia kind of nods there when the Medivh comes down. He wanted this Medivh to come down. He feels fairly comfortable because he knows he has the Ooze to answer it, and he just kind of cleaned this up super nicely.
And the Behemoth on the back as well may be able to deny 7 damage to face from the Medivh, so you're essentially neutralizing both the weapon and the minion for the turn at the very least.
Right, and then you can just kind of look at the card advantage from there. Like, Cydonia just has a fistful of cards, and Monsanto not so much. He was really trying to rely on this Atiyesh to push the tempo. Yeah. Wish we could see Monsanto's face.
I was just thinking that.
No emotion from
He
him.
doesn't look phased whatsoever.
Now we get interesting. The Alexstrasza, the only other threat remaining in Monsanto's deck, besides a Pyroblast, if you count that as a threat or not. This means he's going to be able to develop just a really large board. He also has the ability to push 7 to the face with the Firelands Portal. And there are a lot of rolls off Firelands Portal that could really impact the game. You talk about hitting like Earth Elemental right here and pushing 7 to face. That could be lights out. So, as Monsanto, you have to try and evaluate, do I want to go for the consistent play of Alexstrasza, get the 8/8 out, or do I want to go for the more, I hope I get kind of lucky off Firelands Portal play? How dire is the situation for me? And he's going to say it's kind of dire. You need something to happen here.
Raza.
5/5's not
A
bad.
reasonable body.
No burn currently in hand for Monsanto, but I can't imagine he trades here. Even with Alexstrasza in hand, it just seems like you're never really going to be able to close the game by trading.
Jades are going to be 4/4 now for Cydonia. I mean, you do have Meteor, so maybe to an extent you can fight for board, but it's not in hand, so I don't think you have the liberty of doing that right now.
Yeah,
And this does mean Cydonia will have to commit to a clear turn.
he gets to cycle cards while clearing for the most part, yeah. He has to use his heal inefficiently, but able to draw so many additional resources. He's going to find more heal, and he gets to completely clear this board from Monsanto. And all Monsanto has left in his deck really is second Firelands Portal and this Alexstrasza, a Pyroblast, and a Cabal Courier and 2 Babbling Books.
Cabal Courier in a dream.
Yeah, he's going to need a bit of good fortune to find his way out of this, and the Innervate there is going to allow Cydonia to cycle one of the Wild Growths, which then gives him an excess mana, which then he can cycle, which could find another Innervate. Oh no, he's already used
3
one
draws
Innervate.
off of 1 Wild Growth.
Right.
I mean, this is just the pure power of the Jade Druid in the late game. If you do get down to this situation where you have a reasonable amount of health, you're starting to build up your board, and your opponent's just simply out of resources, there's no way you're ever going to lose.
Yeah, and you know, this power turn was just all brought to you by saving that Nourish and knowing in the mid game, hey, they're not going to put too much pressure on me. I have the ability to slow play this and then just cycle it in the mid game. They may get a little bit of chip damage in, but I'll be fine at the end of the day. And you know, that's exactly what happened. Just exploit the fact that the Cygunther Mage has really weak mid game. Take advantage of that to draw cards to build the combo for the late game because you already have the weapon removal. Make sure you remove the Etiesh and then just coast from there with your extra cards doing broken Jade Druid stuff like this.
This week's episode of Jade Druid Beatdown is brought to you by Nourish, a 5-mana card that can draw you 3 more cards. Play Nourish today.
Yeah. It is interesting though, because it was very tempting to just innervate Nourish for the crystals there because it just fit the curve so well and would have allowed Cydonia to have a lot more tempo.
Yeah, he would have been able to go into Aya the turn after.
Right, yeah. So it would have been like much higher tempo play, but I believe the way that he played it is a lot more consistent overall.
It really shows great knowledge of win condition. Honestly, you know what the mage wants to do to kill you, and you know what you need to prevent that. He didn't have Earthen Scales or Fail Rage in hand at that moment, knew he would need to draw it. That was the way he was going to get it, and it worked out very well for him. So Cydonia going to tie up this series now 1-1, and Monsanto will still need to find a win with that Gunther Mage. I really like the deck. It's had some really great results, but I haven't seen it performing too well as of late.
Right, it's more of a deck that's performed better in the more aggressive metagames. In the European, playoffs last weekend, it was actually doing a lot of work, able to pick up a lot of wins. There was a majority of the players, I think, in the top 8 running it.
Yeah.
But that metagame is completely different. In that metagame, everybody was playing aggro decks. Everybody was playing decks that were kind of exposed to the removal kit of the mage. A lot of control decks, they play minions that you can't really fireball or you can't really frostbolt, or they don't play minions at all, and then these burn cards are kind of sitting dead in your hand the whole game. So it's not as beneficial as it is in those other matchups. So the mage can tend to run into problems.
Yeah, maybe just not the meta for it. Obviously, last week at the Europe Spring Playoffs was very different. This weekend, we're at the Americas Spring Playoffs, and next weekend, it is going to be Asia Pacific's turn. Coming up next weekend, across the ocean we go to the other side of the world, Hearthstone's Asia Pacific region. The best players in Asia Pacific will gather to begin their quest towards the Spring Championship. Among the world-class field are Samuel Tsao of Taiwan. A great performance in the Bahamas earned him a berth at Worlds.
I did it.
Now he's looking to qualify for his 2nd straight seasonal championship. Tom 60229 of Taiwan. After just missing qualifying for the Winter Championship, he's #1 in points this spring.
Tom 60229 has a long storied history.
And B787 of Japan. An emotional Winter Playoffs performance
B787 by the skin of his teeth.
earned him a trip to the Bahamas. Now he's eager to take it to the next level.
I'm trying to step it up each time. So my next goal is to make it to Shanghai.
The Asia Pacific Winter Playoffs, next weekend on the 2017 Hearthstone Championship Tour. Asia Pacific coming up next weekend, the 3rd and 4th. Obviously, Asia Pacific is a very different region as far as deck choice and player style than America's. And I'm surprised to see that America's is so different than Europe, at least what we're seeing from deck choice. So much more controlling, whereas Europe was very aggressive. And it is really a staggering change considering that normally the Americas players are very aggressive play styles.
Yeah, they kind of, I think a lot of players are getting more keen to adapting to what the previous tournament's meta was. A lot of times North America has been kind of just doing their own thing, but this time it seemed like everybody tuned in to the European playoffs, and a lot of the North American players were going to say, well, everyone else is going to copy the European aggro decks. I'm just going to counter that with the control decks.
Take it one step further.
Right, and when everybody takes it one step further, then the guy that takes it 2 steps further is the guy that's going to win.
Guy who's playing mid-range is the one who has the advantage there.
Right, which is, in this case, Cydonia is the one that's playing the more mid-rangey lineup. You wouldn't think of Taunt Warrior as a mid-rangey deck, but kind of is.
It's certainly not as controlling as Control Warriors of, you know,
it only has
yesteryear.
2 hard removal spells. It's just 2 executes, and I guess 2 brawls if you count that as a hard removal spell.
Not seeing shield slams just breaks my heart still.
Yeah, it has way less removal. It kind of just tries to do its own game plan and not really interact with your game plan all that much.
All right, well, it is going to be Cydonia bringing back out the Quest Warrior and Monsanto bringing back out his Mage. Harrison Jones immediately in the opening hand for Monsanto going to be a really effective tech choice against the Warrior.
It's all right against Warrior. It's the only weapon that the Warrior has until the quest is complete is only the War Axe, and a lot of the times the War Axe is going to swing at your Arcanologist and then swing at something else, and then by the time turn 5 rolls around, you still have Harrison in your hand, and the War Axe is totally gone. So I don't actually know if he would keep it here. Yeah, he's going to mulligan it away. It just doesn't line up well with the mana curve for how War Axe works in the game. Plus, I wouldn't be surprised to see Cydonia. No, you'd probably keep War Axe still, but it's just awkward how it lines up there. So he does end up pitching back the Harrison Jones. It's not the greatest tech card in the matchup, but it is all right in the later stages to remove some damage when the Warrior's trying to push to kill you. Cabal Courier, though, that's one of the cards you really want to see. You just want to be able to try and outvalue what the Taunt Warrior is trying to do. Just generate a huge board over time, get a bunch of removal cards that efficiently keep them off the board, and just push in a bunch of chip damage with your minions. Then whenever the game starts getting to a close, burn them out over the top.
Yeah, the Quest Warrior has really limited armor gain. I think 1 copy of Shield Block for Cydonia, and then just the Armor Up Hero Power, which you don't really want to be using all that much. You would rather be furthering yourselves towards your quest, making good use out of weapons and early taunt minions. So certainly not as well positioned as the Jade Druid was as far as armor gain.
Right, yeah. It's kind of funny
as
that Warrior...
silly as that sounds.
Yeah, Warrior has much worse armor gain. A lot of players in their Taunt Warrior don't even run shield block, so it's unique that Cydonia has this shield block, and this is really the matchup for shield block. That's why it's in your deck a lot of the times, is this specific matchup. It really helps out in the later stages of the game, so you can start pushing face with that Ragnaros Hero Power, start pressuring the Mage, and close the game out. One thing he is missing, though, that would really help him against Mage is weapon removal. Not having weapon removal from the Medivh does allow the Mage to potentially outvalue you in the mid-game if they can hold on to those Firelands Portals, Meteors, or Flame Strikes to make sure they can get a lot of ATS value.
Means that Cydonia will have to hold on to at least 1 copy of Brawl to be able to brawl post Medivh, but you sometimes will feel pressured just from these honestly quite weak early game minions that can just stack up so much chip damage that you might feel pressured to brawl that because you don't have access to, you know, Whirlwind Sleep with the Fishes in some cases. So really need to efficiently make use of your valuable removal. And Cydonia does have 2 copies of Armor Smith, so the armor gain potentially can be a little bit higher than we're used to seeing in the Quest Warrior builds.
Right.
I think that is more so to tech against aggression, but obviously also works well in this situation.
For sure. Having extra armor is pretty good against Mage that's trying to burn you out over the top. So he's got to line up the brawls against the wide boards that Monsanto can create. He's got to line up the execute against the Alexstrasza, ideally, and he's got to line up enough armor gain to make sure that he can kind of beat the threat of the Pyroblast. So there are the tools kind of in the warrior deck to do it. The problem is the warrior generally has a worse draw engine and doesn't always have the ability to line those answers up the way they want to, and that's why the matchup's kind of mage favored. The warrior can answer everything, just usually isn't able to find everything lining up correctly.
Well, the one thing that I'm seeing is a copy of Battle Rage in Cydonia's warrior list. If he can land a really high-value Battle Rage and net himself more additional resources than he would have with just Acolytes of Pain and no Battle Rage, then maybe he'll be able to line up all of those separate things on his to-do list for this matchup. But it's a lot to ask when you are only drawing one per turn, and maybe you only net one draw off of Acolyte.
Yeah, having the additional card draw there is definitely a big help, as well as the Dirty Rats can be a huge factor. If he can well time a Dirty Rat, the Cygunther Mage has a very limited amount of minions. It has like the Mana Worms, Medivh's Valet, the Arcanologists, and the Babbling Books, which all kind of come out in the early game. And then as it transitions into the late game, the only cards that are minions in the Mage's hand are going to be Alexstrasza, Medivh, Harrison Jones, maybe. And if you can pull one of those out with Dirty Rat, that's even better than weapon removal. So trying to time one of those Dirty Rats is super important in the matchup and can definitely lead to a win. Now this is a bit interesting. Monsanto has the ability to maybe polymorph this minion from Cydonia, removing away the Death Rattle so that the beast doesn't get shuffled into his deck to kind of lower the amount of Curator value if he so chooses. Trying to make Curator give Cydonia less taunts is a very powerful effect, as you kind of want to make him not complete the quest if you have the option. And in the same vein, the Polymorph has better targets in the deck stat-wise, as Primordial Drake is slightly more stats.
Yeah, but not going to get too much better than the Direhorn Hatchling. Also, it would buff up your Mana Worm. Maybe you get 3 damage to face. How worried are you about this Armorsmith? Is it so worried that you're willing to polymorph, coin, hero power the sheep, and then trade the worm into the Armorsmith outright?
I like it. I like the clean clear. I think the coin is not too valuable in Monsanto's deck, as he doesn't have Archmage Antonidas. He thought about it for a really long time and ends up deciding at the rope to hold back the coin ping. He has a plan for this coin. Being able to coin out Medivh, get it out earlier before a potential Dirty Rat can come out from Cydonia is absolutely huge. Holding the coin in your hand, bluffing that you're trying to set up for a coin Medivh to force your opponent to play Dirty Rat is also really huge. So there's a lot of tricky little things about holding that coin that I imagine he's thinking about. And Cydonia is probably going to be worried, seeing that that coin is still there, that maybe there's a Medivh looming around the corner to come out, on turn 7.
All right, well, Sleep with the Fishes probably won't get too much more value in the late game. Obviously, you still have Primordial Drake in hand, as well as Brawl, which will be the hard removal post Medivh.
Not a lot going on here for Monsanto. He's facing down 3 power, so he doesn't really need to respond to this aggressively. So he could just ping Cydonia in the face and pass if he really wanted to. He's got to think about how valuable is playing this Babbling Book, what's a random card off it that's a spell really going to accomplish in this situation, compared to how valuable is it to hold it for denying Dirty Rat from sniping his Medivh later on, or what have you. Because as it stands, he has no other minions in his hand. So if he does draw Medivh and Cydonia wants to try and Dirty Rat him, he could find himself in a bit of trouble. He does end up playing it, though.
There aren't too many spells that are more valuable than not having your Medivh pulled from hand.
Right. You could just try and accept that, hey, maybe he doesn't have the Dirty Rat, which is fine.
Greater Arcane Missiles is all right as far as mage spells go. Maybe it lets you clear off an additional taunt minion somewhere down the line.
And playing the book here further strengthens your bluff that you're trying to coin Medivh. And now the Cydonia, if he did play the Dirty Rat, would pull nothing, and Monsanto would have successfully debated and dodged a Dirty Rat. But Cydonia doesn't have it. I imagine he would play it if he had it, though, honestly. chooses to attack with the Armor Smith instead of the Bloodhoof Brave. He could have tried to enrage the Bloodhoof Rage there, but wants to hold it back against Fireland's Portal.
Well, wisely so.
Yeah.
Fireland's off the top for Monsanto. Yeah, I believe if Cydonia had pretty much any taunt here in hand, it would have come down this turn, obviously except for Primordial Drake, where it physically cannot due to mana cost, because Cydonia is still at 2 out of 7 taunt minions having been played. And when you're pretty much only playing 1 taunt per turn, you're still looking at minimum 5 turns before you're able to complete this quest and get it online. That's a lot of time for the mage to gather even more resources, and they're already ahead of you.
Yeah, it's not looking great for Cydonia as far as quest completion goes. He wants to be drawing into his Stonehill Defenders and the Curator to try and speed up that process. Monsanto just fires off the missiles here. He doesn't think the missiles is going to get too much better of a board to try and get some work done. Unfortunately for him, it doesn't even answer the Bloodhoof Brave. But what else was it going to do in the future, right? It's like the worst card in his hand, and he needed to do something, kind of, because his hand's getting a little clunky.
Best case scenario, you were clearing the board.
Right.
Stonehill off the top, potentially, could have netted Cydonia a Direhorn or an Ellie Armorsmith, would have made for a great turn 8. These are less good, but at least it is essentially 2 taunts towards this quest.
Right, that's the important part. They're taunts towards the quest, and being able to squeeze in an armor up's not that bad. So you probably take the Pompous Thespian, because it's the most pressure on this turn, and then squeeze in the armor up. He's going to take the Lord of the Arena. He really wants to just juice value. So I guess Cydonia is feeling like his hand just doesn't have enough gas in it, and that he's going to get overwhelmed by Monsanto's board presence if he doesn't take something big. I can see it. There's definitely a distinction in hand size at the moment.
I mean, it makes sense. Monsanto only has so much hard removal, and, you know, Cydonia is probably thinking, eventually one of these minions can stick, and once I finish my quest, I'll have something to back up Sulfurous and the Rag hero power. I mean, you need some form of pressure on the board afterwards, otherwise you're gonna struggle a little bit.
Right, that's why you keep the quest in this matchup. You do need pressure, you do need to kill the mage. Mage just has its way of eventually finding enough damage if you give it infinite time.
Monsanto still...
I would like to see him try and hold back this Babbling Book. He has plenty of spells in hand that do various stuff. I don't think there's going to be an additional spell he could draw that really helps him in this situation. He has utility spells for every purpose. So holding back this Babbling Book allows him to beat Dirty Rat in the future, and that's a huge part of this matchup right now, is just avoiding the Dirty Rat and making sure your Medivh can come down. The Volcanic Potion there is also really nice because you set the Stonehill Defender to a 1/2, and Cydonia has been holding 4 cards almost this entire game. You can put him on most likely having a Primordial Drake by how awkward his turns have been.
Makes it less likely that he'll want to play it. I do think that at this point, if Monsanto draws Medivh, he's probably playing it right away, unless it were to come off of some other form of card draw and he wouldn't have the mana.
Yeah, for sure. I don't see any reason why he wouldn't play Medivh. Yeah, there's no weapon removal in the deck for Cydonia, so at this point, Dirty Rat's been diffused. He doesn't have to worry about it anymore. It was just a problem in the potentially before 8 mana stages. Now if he ever draws it, he just slams it on the board immediately. So yeah, good call on that. He's just good to go on that. So
there is, you know, obviously it's good now that he does not have it. And were he to draw it within the next few turns, it would be great. But there is a reality where Medivh is on the very bottom of the deck.
Right.
And you don't get to it in time.
Yeah, and he's got to be thinking about how does he win if that's the case. And that's when you start using some of these 7 mana spells that are really good with it.
That's when 7 mana kill a Lord of the Arena, summon your own 6/5 stat line minion potentially is really good.
Yeah, it's definitely no joke. It's just half as much value as you could be getting, which gets a little scary as the quest warrior starts completing its quest, and it's just unfortunate for Monsanto that he hasn't found the Medivh yet.
I mean, there are very limited minion resources in the deck for the Gunther Mage, but I mean, usually they get them.
Usually they do. The matchup is slightly favored for the Gunther Mage. Usually they are able to string up together enough damage.
And maybe that would be a situation where Harrison Jones would be even, you know, getting some value in this matchup. You know that Sulfuras is coming down eventually, and, you know, maybe you do need one card off of Harrison to try and get you deeper towards those finisher minions.
Right, just the burn to close out the game after everything's been going well.
At least it looks like it may get some use in this matchup, but it's just been honestly slow turns for both of these guys. Cydonia still needs 3 more taunt minions to complete his quest. Monsanto doesn't have any method to make a large board and actually put on pressure at this point, and Cydonia is at 40 health. He actually has managed to build up a pretty reasonable armor total thus far, meaning that the burn plan for Monsanto is looking less and less likely.
Which means he's going to have to wait for this Medivh to fire off some of these larger spells if he's hoping to overwhelmingly outvalue the Taunt Warrior.
All right, so if Medivh were to come in hand now, he would not have the mana to play it.
And then it could get dirty ratted.
Yes.
Yeah. So those are always little scary situations, but you're fairly certain Cydonia doesn't have dirty rat. And it looks like he's just kind of going off with all of the spells at the moment. He's not really holding back for it. He's hoping to tempo out this Mana Worm and this 4/4 to try and get in enough chip damage, land Alexstrasza, and then hit his opponent for, you know, 25. He's got 25 burn in hand at the moment. So although Cydonia's life total is impressive, so is Monsanto's burn.
Okay. How much of that burn are you willing to sacrifice?
Yeah.
I mean,
That is
Fireball
the question.
Valet clears the Primordial Drake, gives you a 2/3 on board,
Right.
but it's not enough pressure for you, and then you're sacrificing 6 damage.
He has 10 cards left. If he just starts launching burn now, he has 10% to draw the Alexstrasza, and then he could play Alex and then try and finish him. You know, if he just were to try and knock out the armor.
Yeah.
So that's an option. Not a good one. Looks
But
like
plan A hasn't panned out, so we're looking at, you know, where's plan B, plan C now? Because obviously if you pick up Medivh still, you have the burn activation to make
Well.
things happen, but you haven't seen a brawl yet. So at this point, it's pretty unlikely that a Medivh and then a large board on the backswing would even stick at all.
right, but you don't need that big of a board. You just made Medivh into Pyroblast. That's a usually big enough board to get the job done.
Medivh, Deathwing, sounds good.
Right.
All right, Fireball more valuable than Flame Strike.
There's a taunt that allows Cydonia to complete the quest and then equip it and start using the hero power. He may be a little bit afraid of the amount of burn Monsanto could have in his hand, because thus far Monsanto has done a whole lot of nothing throughout the course of this game. And when your mage opponent is not doing a lot of things, that usually means they have a lot of fireballs in their hand. So he could be afraid to even change his hero power at this point. We can see 28 damage in Monsanto's hand, so we know it's like not even close to being able to kill him at the moment. And plus, just the amount of mana that it takes. I think
It's gonna take him 4 turns.
Right, it's going to take forever, but Monsanto will have ice blocks, so he will be able to buy himself additional turns to try and get there. We've seen 1 Armor Smith from Cydonia.
Yep.
Yeah, he's going to take a little bit of a slower route, though.
I mean, Monsanto's big strength, as he says, is his play with combo decks. He loves playing Freeze Mage on ladder. He loved Patron Warrior back when it was available to play last year during his championship run. He has a lot of experience with these types of decks, and now he's going to be able to start putting something together.
Yeah. So Cydonia, he still has the armor up hero power, so he still has a chance to make his way out of this situation. So good on him for, you know, not switching to the Sulfuras yet, not going with the Bloodhoof Brave Sulfuras and trying to pressure Monsanto, because with the Alex drawn there, that would have just been GG, because he would have been able to push so much damage behind this. But Cydonia has the armor up ability still, so he can get rid of his opponent's minion and try and armor up out of range of the burn from Monsanto.
Well, over the course of 2 turns, Monsanto has 25.
Right.
Cydonia, over the course of 2 turns, can get up to 27.
So he can just make his way out of it slowly. How much more burn is left in the deck for Monsanto? There's not a lot. There's 2 Fireballs, 2 Frostbolts, the Pyroblast. I believe we've seen one Firelands portal, so I think there's another Firelands portal,
We saw.
and we have one more Medivh's Valet.
Did we see the glyphs?
We have seen
We saw 2 babbling books
2 babbling books.
with the arcane missiles and the greater arcane missiles.
Right.
So there's probably glyphs left,
Yeah.
which do have something along the lines of a 40% chance to pick up some form of targeted damage.
Right. Most of the time, the targeted damage is not a lot, but
Yeah.
sometimes all you
Like
need is
2
a little.
or more.
Right. Yeah.
I
And
think.
he's right on the cusp there, so it might be all it takes. That's a big draw.
That is. That will be an additional 2 life for Cydonia, because Monsanto can deal 15 with double Fireball Frostbolt on his next turn. Cydonia can armor up to 17 and then heal an additional 4 with the Ally Armorsmith and the Hero Power. So that means that Primordial Glyph now needs to net 4 damage or more. So Frostbolt, Fireball. Flame Geyser would not do it though.
Yeah. It needs to put in work. So Monsanto can set up for that, the double Fireball ping, or just the Primordial Glyph first. Probably makes the most sense. Try and find a burn spell.
Blizzard denies.
Denies the
2 armor
healing.
gain.
Sure, that's 2 damage.
It's better than your other options.
Right, and it helps you to avoid getting popped as quickly.
1 Firelands portal left.
Right, and the second glyph. And a Medivh's
Medivh's
Valet.
Valet, yeah. So still
He needs to get something off the
potentially 3
glyph.
options.
Or, yeah, he needs glyph or Firelands portal. Medivh's Valet is probably not going to cut it.
Cydonia is going to be out of range by that point.
Right.
What to do?
So alongside the Blizzard, he can squeeze in a Frostbolt and a ping. He wants to try and maximize his pings, squeeze in a ping every turn.
Then you get 13 next turn with double Fireball Ping.
Unless he's setting up lethal here somehow. Now he's missing a ping potentially. But what does this open up? To miss the ping here, now he can go... Now he's setting up for the Medivh's Valet top deck. So it makes Medivh's Valet live for 1 turn to squeeze it in this way.
It's true, you can Valet, or, yeah.
It would have worked either way. You could have squeezed in the ping this turn, went ping Frostbolt, and then went Fireball, Medivh's Valet.
Medivh's Valet.
Right. So it's just
Either way, you've
potentially-
got the 2 mana left over.
Yeah, it's potentially missing a ping going forward.
Yeah, 1 damage. I mean, obviously the Warrior's healing in increments of 2, but when they're at 13 and you've got
Made to
9, odd numbers, 1 damage could definitely matter.
Cydonia's
He's going for it.
just trying to push for lethal. There's Ice Block up. Now Cydonia is going to be unable to heal,
Oh,
and the Medivh's Valet's picked up anyway. So he's going to be able to close it, but without the Medivh's Valet there,
that was getting scary.
that was kind of weird by Cydonia because Monsanto could just ping him down.
I mean, with the Ally Armorsmith on board, Cydonia was still netting 2 per turn. If
Right,
it's not
okay.
frozen, and then if he picks up, I don't know that he had any other Whirlwind activators. He used Whirlwind, he used Double Drake. So I don't think there was actually any way for the Armorsmith to get value on board, because obviously Monsanto wasn't going to damage any of Cydonia's minions, I don't think.
Right.
That was a close one.
It was really close.
Any way you
Like,
look at it.
He was very close to being able to armor out, and he was very close to being able to pop the first block, and he just wasn't able to string together enough
Yeah.
to make anything happen there. And really the basis of that whole thing was just like, he couldn't really pressure the mage at all. He didn't draw any of the taunts he wanted in the early game.
Yeah.
He had to complete the quest by playing 2 8-mana taunts, which isn't what you want to be doing. So Monsanto, once again, able to pick up a win against the Taunt Warrior, and that's what his lineup is trying to do. Just target out that Taunt Warrior, get wins against it, and he's having a lot of success right now.
Yeah, he absolutely is. Top 8 at the 2016 America's Summer Championship. A 62.6% win rate with Freeze Mage. I said he loves combo decks. Obviously, Gunther Mage isn't traditional Freeze Mage, but the burn plan is very similar. So he has a
Right.
lot of experience with these style of decks.
Yeah, you just have to hold a lot of resources and plan out how you're going to use your cards, and he was doing so very efficiently. You have to switch game plans a lot with that deck. You have to You know, can I outvalue them? Do I have the Medivh that can do that? Yes, no. And then switch between value, tempo, or burn. Like, it's a really versatile deck, which is why it's so fun to play and pretty interesting to watch.
Well, it looks like it's going to come down to Monsanto's Paladin with that Vine Cleaver tech, so slightly advantageous against control decks. And Cydonia still needs to get away with this warrior that is struggling a bit, as well as his quest rogue. So he's going to queue up that rogue first, say it's got a better chance than the warrior against the Paladin that does do a great job of neutralizing the rag hero power in the late game.
Right, and quest rogue is very, very good when people are not trying to kill it. And this Paladin deck is not trying to kill anything, or at least not very quickly anyway. It's got a pretty slow curve, you know, no 1-drops in the deck. The only 2-drops are Doomsayer, Hydrologist, Wild Pyromancer, and all of the 3-drops are not aggressive minions at all. The most aggressive one being Aldor Peacekeeper at a 3/3. The other 3-drops, you know, Stonehill Defender, Acolyte of Pain. You're not really going to be beating someone up in the early game with these minions, which is going to give the quest rogue a lot of time.
Yeah, whereas the mid-range Murloc variant of Paladin has a fantastic matchup against Quest Rogue because it is so aggressive in the early game.
Right.
This Control Paladin is the complete opposite end of the spectrum. It is not putting on any pressure early on. It would rather use Doomsayer and Hydrologist plus Wild Pyromancer to keep other aggressive boards at bay. Unfortunately, this is not an aggressive board from Cydonia, really, the one that he will be developing. There's much that Monsanto can do anything about. You don't care about 1/2 Fireflies and 1/1 patches. Once Crystal Core comes down, it's going to be all over from there.
Right, right. So he keeps the Stonehill Defender off the mulligan, which I really like because that gives you the ability to high roll into a Sunkeeper Terram, which is amazing for the matchup. So when you're in these kind of really bad matchups, those are the kind of things you have to be looking out for. He has the equality as well, so he could try and maybe he can run the quest rogue out of steam. It's happened before. It's not totally unheard of. So,
historically.
Right. Yeah, he's got opportunities to make stuff happen.
When you're in a poor matchup, obviously you have to look at even the least likely of options as being possible. Unfortunately, these are not taunt minions that put on a good amount of pressure, and they're not Sunkeeper Terram, so going to do very little at dealing with Cydonia's board state and not going to threaten to kill him any faster.
Right, so you have a few options here. Option 1, you take like an aggressively statted minion that you can play next turn, try and fill out your curve and just push face with that damage, and maybe you can kill him in time, so that would be like the Cyclopean Horror route. Or option 2, you take Grime Street Protector because it's a 6/6, so it's kind of awkward to get traded into by 5/5s, and later on maybe you can try and stabilize post-quest. So he's really got to try and determine his game plan right here, right now. You know, does he want to try and rush Cydonia down pre-quest, or does he want to stabilize post-quest? And he's picking, hey, I want to stabilize post-quest.
Makes sense to me. It's what this deck is much more adept at doing. With equality already in hand, maybe there's a world where you get Wild Pyro or the Consecration to clear off some of the board. And if you do have your own board developed, Sunkeeper Terram comes down, you can Grime Street Protector, maybe make some good trades. It's going to be tough, but
it's not easy. And Cydonia already has the ability to complete the quest fairly quickly, so as soon as he can get this Igneous Elemental destroyed, he could then play both of the Flame Elementals, play down a Firefly, Youthful Brewmaster, a Flame Elemental, and play the Flame Elemental from Firefly, satisfying the quest. So he's going to have like a turn 6, turn 7 at the latest kind of quest completion, depending on when this Igneous Elemental dies, I guess.
And then Vanish in hand. If you can pick up Preparation somewhere along the way, Vanish any board that Monsanto may be able to build up, which is going to be small, likely at best, and then you are able to develop with your cheap minions on the backswing. So just a really fantastic matchup for the Rogue when you get even a reasonable hand. Cydonia playing Swashbucklers in the list.
Yeah, not that common of a card that we see. A lot of players started taking it out. It's kind of makes the deck more well-rounded against a lot of stuff just because it allows you to pull the patches out early against aggro, and it's not that bad versus control because you do get a little bit of extra card generation. But a lot of times against, the Pirate Warriors or the Aggro Druids, being able to consistently pull patches in the early game to fight for the board is super important. So it's, I would say, an anti-aggro tech, as weird as that sounds.
I mean, you don't have access to backstab. You're not playing Eviscerate or Fan of Knives. So there's only so much that you can do in the early game. Obviously, Glacial Shard is going to be your best bet at slowing down decks like Aggro Druid or Pirate Warrior. And then, Shadow Stepping or bouncing Glacial Shard can really slow down aggressive decks. But Swashbuckler is certainly a method of doing it as well. Also, card generation. Obviously, it's not as effective as Novice Engineer, but it does provide you additional resources. So not the worst bounce target itself.
Yeah, picks up the Firefly. So Monsanto does know that Cydonia essentially has 2 Flame Elementals in his hand, and he needs to make sure that he never kills this Igneous. Not that he was really planning on to in the first place, but now he's more sure that he should make sure that that doesn't die. Which, at some point, he might even try and Forbidden Healing it. Not even kidding.
As silly as that sounds, yeah. I mean, you play against Quest Rogue as any deck that can deny the death of the Igneous Elemental. I mean, I've been a priest several times where I've Potion of Madness aggressively just to put some Flame Elementals in my own hand. You need to avoid giving them the additional minions and the additional resources to complete the quest.
Yeah, post-quest, Monsanto's hand is fairly strong, having the Primordial Drake equality on 10. He has the Grime Street Enforcer, which is a great 6/6. Ragnaros the Light Lord, which heals him for 8 and then kills 2 5/5s, which isn't bad. If he picks up Tyrion, he's all set. Tyrion is like one of the greatest cards against Quest Rogue, just shutting down tons of 5/5s, then giving you a weapon which kills 5/5s. Because they have to trade in a minion to get rid of the bubble, and then it requires 2 more minions to kill the Tyrion body. So, Control Paladin's not at a total loss after the quest. They just, if the quest's completed early enough, it's a huge bummer for them.
Yeah, I mean, in which case Forbidden Healing is fantastic because Ashbringer kills an additional 3 minions if you're going for the run your opponent out of resources game plan, which it does seem like is what Monsanto has committed to.
Yep.
Two more Flame Elementals coming down. This Igneous will pretty much never die, but Cydonia does have the Vanish in hand as a sort of last-ditch effort to bounce the Flame Elementals and get that quest online. It would allow for a turn 7 Crystal Core play.
So to deny the Vanish quest completion, Monsanto can kill one of the, oh no, because the Firefly comes back and gives another Flame Elemental. He would need to be able to kill the Firefly and a Flame Elemental, or both Flame Elementals, and then also heal the Igneous Elemental. I think you're playing Stonehill Defender this time. And then you kind of go from there.
You don't really have any other favorable options, unfortunately. It is getting to the later stages of the game where Monsanto's resources are going to become useful, actually. So the longer he does stall out Cydonia, the better.
He could try and set up Doomsayer this turn, just accepting that the Igneous Elemental is going to die, and then try and curve 7 into 8 after this.
Yeah, I mean, if you know that the quest will likely be completed, but at the very least, you can have a clear board going into your turn. You get first development.
Right, and your first development's a 6/6.
It's gonna be good.
Which, strong minion, gets kind of beat down by the dagger in 1 5/5, but it's something. It's a little bit of progress. And then you follow that up with Ragnaros Light Lord, or, for his sake, hopefully Tyrion. But, you'll take a Light Lord.
Yeah, I mean, that Drake is, at this point, netted for turn 10 because it is the automatic clear with equality, unless Monsanto picks up
There's a
Wild
cute play.
Pyromancer. What's the cute play?
You get Aldor Peacekeeper the Doomsayer,
Kill off the Igneous.
and then kill off the Igneous, and then play the Igneous Elementals, like the Flame Elementals, to complete the quest on this turn, so that he would be able to play the quest on the next turn easier.
You wouldn't have to use your Vanish. I mean, this way he is still looking for a way to kill off that Igneous or 2 bounce effects. You can Vanish and then Flame Elemental, coin Flame Elemental next turn, but then that's a turn 8 quest completion.
It's a really slow quest completion as it is right now.
Yeah.
I mean, the thought is, if Monsanto develops anything,
Igneous is dying.
Igneous dies, and then when Igneous dies, you play the 2 Flame Elementals, complete the quest, win the game from there, because you still have this giant board. So Monsanto does really need to think about clearing on this turn. Not protecting his Doomsayer last turn kind of walked him into a little bit of trouble.
I'm really wondering if it was almost better to just not play anything this turn, because you can kind of tell that he hasn't had any bounce effects.
He's gonna heal it, yeah.
Yeah.
It's finally come to this.
It was either this or don't play anything.
Right. At that point, he's kind of committed to it. So he's denying the Igneous from Cydonia from dying, trying to shut down that value, trying to make sure he can delay the quest even further. And this sets up for a nice Primordial Drake, too. That's not a bad minion to have against Quest Rogue.
No, I mean, if you clear off the Flame Elementals that come down, that's essentially killing 2 5/5 statted bodies just before they've been turned into 5/5s, and then it's going to take up at least 2 attacks, severely weakening those minions that maybe then you can clear up with, you know, True Silver or a Wild Pyro plus a spell.
Yeah. Cydonia does have the ability to use the Vanish here to try and complete the quest if he wants. He has 7 cards in hand, so he won't overdraw.
There's quite a few bounce effects left in deck. Maybe it's worth it to try to Mimic Pod.
Ooh, he's gonna Vanish first. I would've liked to see him kill off the Stonehill Defender. You can use the 2/3 and both 1/2s. Kill off the Stonehill Defender for free, denying Monsanto an additional resource. So he's kind of just giving Monsanto a free Stonehill Defender, which
Could
that's
be potentially disastrous.
that could be a Tyrion or Sunkeeper Terran. Yeah, that's a big deal. All right. This seems like an ideal time to set up both the Stonehill Defender and Silverback Patriarch just to protect this Doomsayer. Get a nice little tempo swing going into your opponent's quest completion turn. Or actually, not really, because they complete the quest. It takes 5 mana, doesn't it?
Yeah, and then if there are 2 Chargers, Doomsayer would be able to be killed, and at that point, you're going into 9 mana, so you still can a quality Drake.
You know there's 2 Chargers in the hand because there's Patches in the South Sea deckhand that just got banished.
Yeah.
Because Patches didn't come out when he played the deckhand earlier. So it was my first play that I thought, but I don't like it.
If you Drake now, you know Drake's dying to 2 Chargers.
Right, but then, I mean, it's still a Drake out on the field. I guess this heals you for a lot. That's the upside is you get healed for a lot.
20.
Right. Drake coming down that turn kills 2 5/5s essentially though, because you kill both of the 1/2s that are becoming 5/5s on the next turn. But yeah, Cydonia can play the Vanish deckhand and then he can play the Patches that's in his hand.
Monsanto needs to
By playing
live
this
until
deckhand,
turn 10, and then he will have initiative.
Yeah, you just played the deckhand that was not vanished, so
Monsanto gets a
Monsanto
read on the
now
hand.
knows that he has an additional deckhand. Oh, he's playing the additional deckhand too.
Okay.
But yeah, I don't like these sequencing because you revealed extra information. But I guess Monsanto maybe doesn't think, well, he has to know he has Patches.
Yeah, you saw it.
Yeah, it didn't come out from the first pirate. Seems a little sloppy.
Small things that don't seem too impactful at the time, they can definitely add up. Any information that Monsanto has about Cydonia's hand, obviously he knows that there weren't bounce effects in hand because it took until turn 7 Vanish to be able to complete the quest. So you can get that read. You probably know it's a couple of small minions, maybe, you know, a Mimic Pod or a second copy of Vanish, and then the Swashbuckler card.
Right. And Tyrion looks like it's coming out here. He doesn't want to do the Equality clear because he can't develop behind it. So he's waiting until next turn when he can Equality Primordial Drake, therefore he can develop behind it. This way he also gets access to the Ashbringer earlier. Right now he still has 2 True Silver swings he wants to get use out of, so he has 5 weapon swings he needs to kind of get out there. So getting the Tyrion down as fast as possible makes sense to me.
And then really nicely, you Equality Primordial Drake. The minions that are forced to run into the Primordial Drake are left at 1 health. You can Consecration that board and then hope to develop alongside it.
Right.
So you're looking at 2 board clears here. Oy. 5, 10, 15, 20, 25.
Yeah, he's 2 damage off lead.
Does he have the mana for the Patches as well?
Yeah, he's got 6 mana. This all costs 1. Yeah, he's got 30 damage,
he's
right?
he's got double deckhands, then 2 Shadow Steps, there's 20.
And then the
Ferryman's
Ferryman.
25, Patches is 30. Yep, that's lethal.
Well,
Ooh, rogue
look
things.
at that. He almost stabilized post-quest.
Man, it's so hard to do.
So now he's got to do the gadgets and Ferryman. Oh, well, if he...
Does he have time?
Yeah. He's got time, I think.
He would have to Ferryman and no.
He ran out of time.
Okay, so Monsanto can Equality Drake.
Quality Drake's going to keep him alive, and this is a big overcommitment onto the board now
Wow.
for Cydonia. He doesn't have that much resources left.
Monsanto's got Rag Lightlord in hand, used Forbidden Healing already.
Right.
But an 8-8 body on board and 8 health may just be enough. He's managed to run Cydonia out of a lot of resources.
Yeah. I mean, he's still got 4 5/5s, likely drawing a 5th 5/5.
Curse
But-
that rope.
And now he's got 2 of those 5/5s make 2 more 5/5s
5/5s.
each.
So
So,
9 5/5s.
yeah, that's a large number.
Good. But you do have Equality Consecration in hand now.
Right, the second Equality Consecration is huge. And he's got taunts for days, taunts and heals. And you don't have to worry about too much more burst coming up because all of the chargers except for this Patches and I guess Stone Tusk Boar are gone.
Yeah, it's true. Both deckhands are gone. Whew. 2 copies of Boar still.
Right. Another Shadow Steps in there. Gadgets and Ferryman, a useful Brewmaster.
Well, now you still need to kill this board and the board that will come down after it. So, you know, it looked like he was really close. He gave it the good old college try, but Quest Rogue has so much resource generation.
He's facing down 21. And then next turn he's guaranteed to be facing down at least 20.
If
He
the
can
card
deal
in Cydonia's hand
10.
is not a minion.
Maybe there's like an eye for an eye out. Right? Like if you can get 10 with your weapon, 5 with the eye for an eye, there's...
You need to find an additional 6.
Right, and then the 6 comes from your opponent daggering down your Grime Street Enforcer.
Okay.
Yeah, because that's the
Like
obvious way to kill it.
that's the natural way to kill it without losing 5/5s, right? I don't know. Maybe there's some hope. Noble sacrifices maybe enough. The consecrate pushes 2.
Hydrologist likely going to get in.
Yeah, if Hydrologist connect, yeah, Hydrologist.
Glacial Shard
can
comes
connect.
down on the face, so Ashbringer's frozen.
Right,
You're
that's
losing
going to
5.
cause a lot of problems for sure with this whole calculation.
Swashbuckler can net any number of healing. Oh,
You can make it 10-10.
10-10.
Does that even work?
You could play then a 10-10 and a 5-5 this turn. But
Doesn't
Don
it-
Hancho loses 1 health point.
Right, but does the hand buff get taken away or does it still apply?
I don't know.
I don't play too much Don Hancho Quest Road.
Because you can tear them and equality the minions on the board. I'm not positive, honestly, how it activates in hand.
Right. Maybe we'll find out.
It would be something new and exciting. I think just a whole bunch of 5/5s is probably better, though.
I agree with you there. So both equalities have been used. Does Spike Ridge Steed do anything? That can soak up a lot of damage. That would soak up,
There's still a Terramin deck. That's not enough.
not even close, yeah. Tyrion,
That's going to take
that is
2
a
attacks
lot
plus
of 5/5s.
dagger. Yeah.
Yeah, that's about 14 off of stopping it.
One more Equality Consecration board clear, and he would have been in this.
Right, it was just
He would have had it.
the back-to-back Igneous Death Rattles caught up to him. So much board flood's able to come out from Cydonia's side.
Yeah, that's going to be a tied-up series. Cydonia taking a win with the Quest Rogue. Now still needs to find a win with the Quest Warrior up against Monsanto's Paladin deck.
Yeah, this is the matchup that I was talking about pre-game. I was like, the whole series comes down to this. And, yep, That's what ended up happening. It's just the weakest decks in the lineup. Conquest is often just defined by whatever deck is the weakest, whoever deck's going to struggle the most, and by far, these two decks stand out as the decks that are really going to struggle the most in this series.
Ironically enough, we're seeing a lot of both of these decks in the lineups this weekend. Players bringing them, anticipating them to be very strong, and the Control Paladin faltering a little bit. Taunt Warrior has been performing, but unfortunately does not have the best matchup against Control Paladin in the late game. But the Warrior does have a lot of tempo options, whereas the Paladin struggles more in the early to mid game. So maybe the Warrior can apply enough pressure in the early to mid game.
I think it's a close matchup. I think it definitely is. I think the Paladin deck isn't super threat dense. The thing that's the scary part for the Taunt Warrior from Cydonia is going to be these stampeding Kodos that Monsanto's playing. He's got 2 of them in there. So if Cydonia is going to win, he's going to need to, develop minions in a way that plays around the 2 of Stampeding Kodo and build a board that can, start snowballing and not get beat down by the Paladin player. Because the tempo swings of those Kodos landing are going to be absolutely huge, and that's what could be potentially backbreaking for him.
I mean, Cydonia does have 2 copies of Armor Smith and the 2 Acolytes that could pull Stampeding Kodo activators away from Bloodhoof Brave, Ally Armor Smith.
Yeah. He's got a decent hand to be able to complete the quest quickly, just having Stonehill Defender. That's just a beautiful card to help you complete the quest. Taunts on taunts. And so, it's kind of a weird, racy match. Like, they're both kind of control decks, right? Like, one's called Control Paladin, the other one's a quest deck, but it's actually kind of a race. It's 2 decks not designed to be aggressive, trying to be aggressive against each other a lot of the time. Like, Monsanto's Paladin's win condition is assembling overwhelming board presence, which is kind of awkward when you have double equality, double Doomsayer in your deck. Things that are just not good at developing the board. But it is how you win the matchup, and he's got to try and string together a way to do it. Having Curator is a great way to get towards that. That's going to, give him a Stampeding Kodo, which is an ideal card for the matchup, as well as give him an 8-drop, which can help him pressure. Yeah,
all things considered, Monsanto has a lot of his actual early game action in the opening hand. It's very reminiscent of, like when 2 face decks are up against each other and they're forced to play board control for the first however many turns of the game. When you've got 2 control decks up against each other, sometimes you just need to try and put on as much pressure as possible. You're not actually looking to control the game, you just want to end it as quickly as possible. Wow. But it's very difficult to do.
Right, that's what kind of quests have started causing. Quests have kind of shifted control from being a resource battle into a lot of matchups that are control matchups, including one side having a quest, to more of a race, because the inevitability factor of the quests is huge and really changes how matchups work in Hearthstone. So Monsanto has a couple of options here. Usually the pick is Getaway Kodo, so you can try and land it on the Stonehill Defender for additional value. The Redemption is technically more tempo, but he doesn't have great ways to complement that tempo. So he goes for the Getaway Kodo, trying to just be able to land Stonehill Defender, I imagine, and maybe pick it back up and play it again, continuing getting more powerful taunts.
An additional copy of Tyrion or Tarim, even Grime Street Protector in this matchup can do a lot of work, and these are some really underwhelming outcomes for Cydonia. He has not had the best Stonehills through his 3 games of this Warrior deck so far.
Yep. Twilight Geomancer, I think, is the pick.
It's a 2-drop.
It allows you, flexible little taunts are actually pretty good in Taunt Warrior because you can accelerate the rate at which you're getting your quest done. And it's also just a guy that can beat up some dudes, kill the Silverhand recruits as they come out. Yeah, just sometimes you need that. And Lord of the Arena, I think, is just too garbage of stats to be worth it.
So bad.
Yeah, you're spending...
Even when you pick him in the arena, you don't want to.
Right. 6 mana for 11 stats or 2 mana for 5 stats.
He is not deserving of his title.
Faceless Shambler. Okay, I could see it. The Dirty Rat Faceless Shambler play on 6? Maybe? Or just hoping to have a big minion stick eventually and then Shambler it. Playing for the long game because he says, you know what, my hand's good enough right now. I got enough things I want to be doing in my upcoming turns. Interesting pick for sure.
If you end up getting your Direward Hatchling killed off, drawing into the Matriarch, potentially on turn 9 or 10, you can Matriarch, Faceless Shambler. It's a lot of stats.
Late game combos. Meanwhile, Monsanto gets that Sunkeeper Tarim, one of the best pressure cards in Paladin. Allows you to, activate your board, turning all your Silverhand recruits into something that actually deals damage and put on a lot of pressure.
Well, Cydonia is pulling together the taunt resources he needs to finish this quest. You're obviously not worried about damage coming out from the Control Paladin, so losing your armor hero power isn't nearly as much of a factor as it was against the mage.
Right.
So you just want this quest online as soon as possible. Start weaving in, 8 free damage every turn.
Sounds like a plan. And Monsanto's got a really awkward turn. He doesn't want to expend the coin for Harrison Jones because he doesn't get to remove a weapon. It's like super awkward. And he doesn't really have too many great other options. He wants to create a Silverhand recruit to set up for the Sunkeeper Tarim potentially, but at the same time, he wants to be trying to play the Getaway Kodo. So those kind of plans go against each other a little bit.
You're going into the Warriors' turn 5, which is one of their power turns as far as taunt minions. Do you ever consider playing Doomsayer and then on turn 6 coining Curator? It would require like a naked Harrison on 5.
One of the advantages of playing Doomsayer is a lot of people equip a weapon into it. He's going to just end up playing the Aldor Peacekeeper for tempo here, so he could extend minions onto the board to increase the value of Sunkeeper, or just, use his tempo, but also be able to get good Getaway Kodo value on any of the 3 targets if they were destroyed by Cydonia.
I mean, if you can draw out a brawl early on with just Sunkeeper Tarim and a couple of small minions that you've already gotten value out of their battle cries, that opens up a lot of potential for you in the mid game.
Right. Yeah, getting a brawl out of the way is pretty good, because one of the ways the Taunt Warrior actually capitalizes on having the Ragnaros hero power at the end of the game is they utilize Brawl to set up situations where they have, optimal chances, or a lot of times 100% chance, because they weapon down whatever lives through the Brawl and then just, rocket a hero power at your face. So it's one of their best ways to be able to push damage at the end of the game. So making them have to expend that resource can allow your Vine Cleaver and your hero power just to become extremely powerful in the late game to make Ragnaros shots avoid you. Wow, Cydonia's going to take the big risk here. Instead of going for the Direhorn Hatchling, he is going to extend out the Alley Armorsmith into what potentially could have been a Repentance, or what could have potentially been a Stampeding Kodo from Monsanto, and could still be. He runs 2.
You're going into turn 5 against a Paladin with a hefty hand and 2 copies of Kodo.
Right.
I'd be very hesitant to commit that Alley Armorsmith here.
Yeah, so is he. He thought about it a long time between the Direhorn and the Alley Armorsmith, and I guess he just assumes, I can't really beat the Stampeding Kodo at this point. I just really hope he doesn't have it. If he doesn't have it, I can't play around it the whole game. Eventually he's going to draw it, and it's going to land on my Alley Armorsmith. So let's just get it out of the way early. This is his lowest % chance to have it in his hand right now, and extend that Alley Armorsmith. And he gets rewarded for it. Monsanto does not have the answer. But pretty good Tarim turn. He can kill off the Stonehill Defender and then buff his minions up to 3/3s and debuff the Alley Armorsmith to a 3/3 and trade one of them in to that. Trade the Hydrologist in.
And importantly, you still ensure that the Getaway Kodo will land on either Tarim or the Stonehill.
Yeah, they have the minions with taunt, so they're most likely to get it. It could land on the Aldor, but it's more likely to land on one of your minions with taunt. And if a Brawl or something comes out, the Stonehill Defender was played before the Aldor Peacekeeper.
Yep.
So, if the whole board is cleared, then the Stonehill Defender gets returned to Monsanto's hand.
Yeah, or some fishes combo.
Right.
Cydonia, 3 taunts in hand, so at max, still a couple off from being able to complete the quest. Dirty Rat value is looking pretty good, actually.
One of the fun things about Dirty Rat against a Doomsayer deck is, as the game goes on, Monsanto never is really going to want to play these Doomsayers, because he wants to be pressuring Cydonia the entire game. And you can't really pressure with Doomsayer. It's very suboptimal for pressuring the opponent. So they're going to get stuck in your hand. So as Monsanto's hand starts thinning, Cydonia is going to be able to basically guarantee that Dirty Rat lands on a Doomsayer towards the later stages of the game, which is actually really funny.
Force board clear on your opponent, use their resources against them. And Dirty Rat, his battle cry is obviously supposed to be a drawback for the player that plays him. If you use him in the right situations, it can be very beneficial.
Yeah, it's super, super good in these kind of control mirrors and what have you. It's got so much utility against combo decks and control decks in general. You just have to find the right situations for it. So I imagine Cydonia is going to try and hold that until it gets really desperate, and then try and pull one of those Doomsayers out later on in the game.
Free board clear.
Right.
Allows you maybe to save a brawl for later on when you do have Sulfurous equipped and would like to ensure a damage to face.
Yeah, get that solid push going through. Spiker speed. He wants it on the Stonehill Defender because he wants to try and ensure up that the Stonehill Defender is going to die. He wants the Stonehill to be, you know, vulnerable to execute or what have you, single target removal. Cydonia is more incentivized to kill the big minion. Yeah. Dirty Rat's out. Fairly valuable minion. It's not a Doomsayer, but it might even be a little better. Getting out the Curator, denying the draw from Monsanto can really slow down his game plan.
Especially since Curator would have ensured that Monsanto had a copy of Kodo in hand, the second copy of Hydrologist, as well as the second Primordial Drake. So, yeah, denying that is really valuable. You're slowing down the Paladin's game plan, which is good because you have no taunt minions in hand and you're still 2 off from completing quest.
Right. So he wasn't thinking about the Doomsayers at all. He was thinking about this specifically. He played the Dirty Rat going into Monsanto's turn 7, where he could try and have the highest chance to get rid of Monsanto's Curator. So he really wanted to hit that Curator with that Dirty Rat, and that's why he had been holding on to it. Makes a lot of sense. It's a very powerful card in the matchup that allows Paladin to have enough fuel to actually, you know, beat you down before you complete the quest. Monsanto's going to be hard-pressed to string together a lot of minions now.
I mean, the only other draws that Monsanto has, obviously, if Harrison hits a weapon, that'll net at least 1 card, only 1 copy of Acolyte of Pain. So Curator really is the premier draw engine here for Monsanto to be able to pull those minions out of his deck and then ensure that he draws into higher quality cards like Vine Cleaver, like Tyrion, and Rag Lightlord at the top of his curve.
Yeah. Ooh. The Tempo Forbidden Healing. Try and push the board state a little bit. The only downside to this play is Cydonia now has the ability to defuse this Getaway Kodo, which he would not have been able to otherwise. Now the Ghoul can come down, killing the Wild Pyromancer, getting rid of the Getaway Kodo, only giving Monsanto a Wild Pyromancer, which is not a very good gas card.
What now?
So you have to imagine he does that. Yeah.
Denying a significant amount of value here.
Right, like on the previous turn, it looked bad to have, you know, a 3-2 getting contested by a 2-1 there, but your 3-2 was Sunkeeper Tarim and you had Getaway Kodo up. So it was effectively invulnerable because Cydonia did not really want to give that resource back to you. So I think it was maybe a little bit panicked by Monsanto there. Didn't really need to answer that 2-1. He could have just done nothing because the Getaway Kodo kind of forces your opponent to be unable to kill any of these minions.
I mean, now you lose potentially a second copy of Tarim, as well as that Forbidden Healing, which obviously Monsanto's at 30 health now, doesn't seem very valuable, but in the late game, when he's got a wide board state but might be at, you know, 8 health or less, 1 rag shot to the face can end a game. We saw it actually, I believe earlier today, rag shot 1 in 8 chance to hit face and end game, and it did. So you want to give yourself the best chance to not be in those situations, in which case Forbidden Healing can be a valuable tool.
For sure. Not a valuable tool for killing your opponent, though.
No.
Monsanto really wants to be the aggressor. He's seen 1 brawl come out, so he has the ability to maybe try and extend wide on the board and force a second brawl. He also has the Primordial Drake, which at the moment only damages his own board, so that doesn't seem too appealing, but it is the biggest body he can develop on this turn.
You don't really want to throw away Harrison because you know Sulfurous will be there eventually, and you need the card draw now that you've lost Curator.
Well, can you afford to wait for the card draw? Maybe you think, hey, if Sulfurous comes down, I'm just going to die. I don't have the resources for this to go long. I don't have Tyrion to race yet. Maybe you just try and go like Hero Power Harrison, hope they don't have anything.
Maybe
push
the pressure is
aggressively
just
like
too
that.
valuable.
Right, like, it's interesting. He's debating, I think, between Wild Pyromancer or just not Wild Pyromancer. I don't think he's thinking about pressuring with Harrison.
Now, if you put down your own Pyromancer, obviously it dies to Primordial Drake. No such luck for Cydonia, however. His hand is really low impact right now.
Well, he gets to complete the quest. He picked
Yeah.
up 2 taunts, which is fantastic. So I can even take like Infested Tauren, put that down alongside an Armorsmith this turn. Try and get Sulfurous out next turn and just really start pressuring away at Monsanto. Things are looking up for him.
Once the quest comes out,
What now?
you've got your opponent on a clock, which is something that the Paladin struggles to do, especially this control variant. It's great at keeping aggro at bay, but you don't really have finishers.
Right, yeah, its finisher is just kind of running you out of stuff and maintaining reasonable amounts of board control. And I guess Tyrion, to some extent, is the big finisher, but a lot of times it's not enough to cut through all of the health of most of the control-lier decks in the metagame. He does have the Vine Cleaver, though, which would be a great pickup to help keep rag shots away from his face if he's a little lucky.
Additional copy of Direhorn Hatchling is going to mean there is a second Matriarch in deck for Cydonia, so increasing the density ever so slightly of his draws post quest completion.
Sure, it's definitely a good minion to draw.
Well, you can
It's a good brawl hero power.
Sulfurous hero power.
Yeah, and try and connect 8 damage to the face, and the race begins.
You could also Ravaging Ghoul Fishes Sulfurous hero power if
Ooh.
you don't want to give up the brawl. Sulfurous into the Tarim that lives through the Ghoul Fishes.
Right. So then it's which one's more valuable, and how valuable is a 3/3 on the board?
I mean, Brawl is the guaranteed clear on larger minions, so I guess this is your more limited removal capability.
Right. And you get a 3/3.
Yeah,
Ghouls are good.
ghouls are cool. All right, now the pressure's on. Cydonia has limited minion resources, but 8 damage per turn is going to add up very quickly. All right, that's going to be a way to delay even more.
Right, but it's a terrible minion after the quest has been completed, because unless you have a stable board or a Vine Cleaver out, because you just play 1/8/8, 50% of the time it's just going to get destroyed, which is not happy.
Doomsayers come down here.
Doomsayer can eat a rag shot. I don't know if he's that desperate yet. But yeah, right now, if you don't play Doomsayer, the Ghoul trades with your Silverhand Recruit, and 50% of the time your Harrison dies and your opponent tries to develop behind their hero power, so you start falling behind on board, and things get really sticky really quick. So maybe you do Doomsayer.
Move quickly.
You Doomsayer, then maybe you can set up for Hero Power Light Lord to develop. Hope for the 33% chance that Light Lord gets killed. Maybe you get a little bit lucky.
Reporting for duty.
Hey, why do we want Light Lord to get killed?
Or hope that the 30% chance that it does not get
Yeah,
killed.
okay, that makes more sense.
Yeah, your recruits are so valuable.
Yeah.
No. 8/8s are good. 33% chance that it gets killed, as opposed to 50%.
Right. So I think you just let the Doomsayer resolve here. Or, well, you hero power and see what happens. He could try and trade the Ghoul first in the Silverhand Recruit to improve the odds. He could try and secure his board this turn, like play Primordial Drake into the Doomsayer and take it 50-50, but that seems like a ridiculous gamble.
It's scary. If you do get...
Made to fit.
The Armorsmith.
Oh, yeah, okay, there's the 50-50.
Right.
Worst case scenario, you deal an additional 8 to face. Put your opponent at 14.
Commits an Armorsmith and a Whirlwind for that.
Not sure how much use you'd get out of those in the late game, but I mean, we do know there is a copy of Vine Cleaver in Monsanto's deck, and Whirlwind is the cheapest way to clear off those recruits.
Right. He takes eye for an eye here, tries to sure up that 8 base damage to face. He just wants to rocket punch him.
Sounds painful.
It is. And Cydonia could be afraid that this is repentance. He's not afraid that this is repentance.
No fear in Cydonia. All right, Cydonia maybe now.
He's aware that the secret is eye for an eye, right?
Could be. Did you attack?
Noble
Could be
sacrifice,
Noble sack.
right? Yeah. It's most likely eye for an eye in the situation, though. What you could getting through this 4-8's a bummer. Not to mention the fact that fireballs are flying at you, but getting through the 4-8 first is also a bummer.
You wish you could develop more at one time.
He could try and set up a Doomsayer this turn. I think that might be the play. Because any other way, you just like developing a Light Lord into it's appealing 50% of the time. You definitely want to take the Terram.
There's a third Terram of the game.
Right. And if you can pick up that Vine Cleaver finally, you could like swing with the Vine Cleaver hero power and then play Terram and create a super powerful board. There's one Brawl left and one Fishes left for Cydonia. So you're starting to get to the point where you can overwhelm the board. He just needs to find that Vine Cleaver, really, just stuff that can generate additional tokens for him. And then he can bait out the Brawl and be in a really solid position.
And Cydonia would really like draw mechanics here, but I don't think he could even make great use out of them. You have no way to damage your own minions, really, for Battle Rage to be super effective.
Well, it's a start to killing your opponent. 2 more of those and he can get there. But the Doomsayer going off gives Monsanto all of the tempo to develop. This is pretty huge. Currently, Cydonia does not have a way to kill the recruit to set up a 50-50. No activator for the execute either. He's gonna take the Brawl here.
For it. Well, Armorsmith always wins brawls, so I would expect that to be the outcome here. Yep. Same as always.
That was looking really grim until that happened. But yeah, I guess he figured he wasn't going to get too much more value out of the Brawl than that. He's already seen 2 Sunkeeper Terrams. There's probably not a third. And if he can just get this board under control this one last time, maybe he can make a push to get there.
There's only so much that Monsanto can develop on one turn.
Kodo shuts down the execute activator and shuts down the Armorsmith from being able to remove the Silver Hand recruits. Well, 2 Fiery War Axe swings and a Ragnaros shot to the face does end the game.
Yeah, I mean, at what point do you just start
Right, like
trying to go for damage?
he could launch a Ragnaros shot here, and then if it hits face, just start War Axe in the face. Or he can try and increase his odds of the Ragnaros shot to be going face. He's going to take the control play on the board. He wants to try and set up 2 Ragnaros shots back to back, which seems to make more sense.
Now you can potentially run War Axe into a minion, execute, and then maximize your chances of Rag Shot going face. Steed doesn't get all the way through the Bloodhoof.
Steed plus Consecrate does, but then half the time you're dead. Good.
Hero Power Terram is the largest board state,
Right.
and it's still only 2 minions, so
You could like
we know 50% chance to die.
a quality Steed hero power. And then you get to save the Terram for a bigger push later since both Brawls are gone.
Yeah.
It puts out a similar amount of minions. This puts out the most amount of minions, not attacking with the Kodo.
Well, this is with Execute and a War Axe to one of the minions. This is a 50% chance for Cydonia to just outright win the game here.
Well, he's got a 50% chance before he uses the Execute. Because he could hit the Terram or he could hit the face to win the game.
Yeah.
So,
And then War Axe plus minion goes in.
right, if he does it this way, it's still 50% chance. Good.
Either you kill him or you clear the board. Either way you look at it.
Well, the Vine Cleaver shows up, but a little late. That's the tech in the matchup that he really wanted to find.
You can. Equality Drake. Hope that the rag shot hits your Drake. Hope that Cydonia draws something useless.
Like what?
And then start Vine Cleavering him to the dome. Let's look.
Well, both brawls have been used.
Battle Rage would still draw him a card.
Right.
Acolyte of Pain.
Acolyte of Pain.
Yeah.
There's the out.
Has he used both Sleep with the Fishes?
I believe he's used one. So there you go. There's
Okay.
2 or 3
Two
cards.
bad cards.
Yeah.
The rest of it, however, is good.
It's
2 out of 12. So
he could
1 in
just
6.
set up the Spike Ridge Steed, I guess, at like equality and then hero powered Spike Ridge Steed.
Move quickly.
Either way, you're ending
Pretty
up
much
with
the
1 minion.
Same thing, yeah. Consecrate here into the hero power.
Yeah, I guess if the hero power is going to hit your minion, you'd rather it be your 1/1 than your 4/8. So
Makes War Axe lethal.
there you go.
Yeah, it increases the outs by 1 to save the Primordial Drake, which I don't really like because he's never going to use the Primordial Drake anyway in the future, right? Like, when are you going to invest 8 mana into a 4/8?
There's nothing else that would really come down, I guess, that Drake could even kill in this case. Cydonia's deck was very dense with minions with high health and just removal. But regardless, Cydonia is going to take the win in this match 3-1 over Monsanto. That Warrior finally able to get a win in its 3rd game out in the set. And the Paladin looked like it was slightly favored, struggled ever so slightly, and wasn't able to get that large board state at the end to shut down the Rag hero power. So unfortunate for Monsanto, but Cydonia has now taken out both Doc Pone and Monsanto, his fellow representatives at the Montreal Tavern location. Fantastic for him. Congratulations on his 3-1 record. Monsanto down to 2-2, so he's got a bit of a tough road ahead of him. Let's go over to Dan and Kibler on the side set and see what they've got in store